Welcome to Hydrogen Full Core Press feature interview, a series of interviews where we take a deeper dive from the hand of experts on the key topics surrounding the hydrogen market. This week, we have our featured guest, Emanuele Bianco, Program Officer at the Policy and Renewable Energy Market Unit at the International Renewable Energy Agency, IRENA. Welcome, Emanuele, and I'd like to kick off this interview by asking you a general question regarding all these building blocks we are seeing today, how they're built, they're starting to take more shape. Where would you say these blocks should be directed towards?
Oh, well, thank you, and welcome everyone. My immediate reaction is the fact that in the last 4 years, we heard talking a lot about hydrogen. And since there, we have seen a lot of announcements being in place about new large projects being developed to produce green hydrogen. If we look more closely, some of these announcements are moving ahead, but many others are still in early stages. What do we need to see this year, what many experts expect to see this year, are more close to the relationship between the expected projects and their potential buyers, meaning the signing of hydrogen purchase agreement or HPAs, or other long-term agreements that will create a market for green hydrogen. The other thing that we're expecting to see is more clarity on the certification, the standardization, and in general to understand what we mean when we talk about green hydrogen, or renewable hydrogen, or low carbon hydrogen, or any other adjective we want to give to this energy carrier.
Yeah, it seems like the topic of the regulations and the standards is being a pretty big deal among investors. Like we've seen, like for example, in Europe, that some investors are willing to invest, but because of the lack of some work that still needs to be done in the regulation, are shifting towards the investing in the US now, with the especially now with the new framework that was recently introduced with the new Inflation Reduction Act.
Yep.
So where are we standing in terms of those standards and regulations?
So I dare to say that the difference between the US and EU is mainly because the US immediately proposed as a single country and not as a federation of multiple countries, a simple regulation, a simple legislation that was saying, we're going to give you $3 for each kilogram of hydrogen you're going to produce. This is the subsidy. We want this hydrogen to be clean. That's the adjective for their hydrogen, and this means that it's going to be to emit only 2 kilograms per kilogram of CO2 per kilogram of hydrogen at point of production. This gave enough clarity. Instead, Europe, since 2018, established the need to determine the additional rules, in particular the additionality rules, and the lack of clarity toward that may have hampered the investments in the region directly. Also, the fact that every country has its own idea on how to support hydrogen, and there's not a large market with a single instrument in place, may have slowed down investments. However, this week we are expecting the delegated act on additionality, it's actually a very much longer title, to be published. And this is I dare to say one of the most important policy documents we can expect for this year, because once and for all it may describe what renewable hydrogen in Europe will be looking like. And this is not only important for the European countries, because this act can also describe what renewable hydrogen what can be defined as renewable hydrogen also for imported hydrogen. And this is not trivial. the fact that this two definition will be applied one-to-one for both imported and local hydrogen. And if the two definitions will collide, this will both decrease the risk of carbon leakage for hydrogen production to be then imported in Europe, and provide a very long-term clarity to potential exporting countries like the one of the Gulf that may want to export green, renewable, low carbon hydrogen to Europe as soon as possible.
And one of the principles of this, certainly it's become the news of the week, as we were saying before, and this is the Additionality Act. And one of the main principles is the fact of the, where does the electricity that's used for hydrogen originated, where does it come from? Say, like, for example, an hydrogen producer in Italy would not be able to claim hydrogen as renewable if the electricity that is being used comes from Sweden, for instance. Why does that matter?
Oh, well, that matters a lot because so the whole concept of additionality is spurred from the fact that there was this push to develop a new electricity intensive, power intensive technology that will decarbonize the industrial sector, but would add additional constraints, additional load to our power systems that needs to be decarbonized hastily. So the concept was we are going to develop hydrogen, but this will come with additional investment in renewable energy. Who is going to invest in hydrogen cannot use all the power plants energy, because otherwise we are only eating what is being developed and slowing down the transition and giving a lifeline to fossil fuel power plants. And then things become a little bit more complicated because we don't live on a copper plate. There are constraints in our power systems, and location matters. And development of renewable energy can happen for green hydrogen can happen only if that energy can actually be claimed. So there was no congestion between lines. Just to make a small clarification, it would be possible to produce electricity in another country, in another bidding zone, and producing hydrogen in a second one if the prices in these two bidding zones are the same, meaning there will be no congestions. Of course, this in any case increases the constraints for developers to understand where they can actually develop renewable electricity. It also means that the producers of green hydrogen, of renewable hydrogen, can only be located close to the locations with the best viable renewable energy or renewable energy resources for plants that will be new, and that will also have the temporal correlation in place.
And we've seen, for example, in the US that there's been a lot of push from major energy companies, including major oil firms like BP, that they were pushing to get a better definition of what can be defined as renewable energy, essentially to benefit from those tax credits that are incorporated in the newest US climate law. Is that also, do you think that will be the future of energy climate policy?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so the fact that there's so many players in the market right now asking for a better definition of what constitutes renewable energy, essentially to benefit from tax policy benefits that are incorporated. Do you see a trend in policymaking here where we will eventually incorporate these sort of benefits for those energy sources that can account as renewables?
Well, renewable energy by definition is only energy that is consumed at a rate that is below the amount of the rate, sorry, energy that is consumed at a rate below of its own recreation. So basically that we are not consuming something that will not be substituted during our lifetime. That's why, for example, also some definitions of bioenergy has to be taken as very carefully to determine what is renewable and what is not. Of course, words can be twisted, and will not be the first time in the history of energy that something that is not renewable is being considered renewable. There has been many examples, and in this framing matters a lot. If I say that I want to use renewable hydrogen or green hydrogen or low carbon hydrogen, I may mean very different things. And that's why definition matters for long-term investments.
Definitely. And so can you say we might see in Europe with this when this delegated act comes into place, where it's expected to come into place soon, can we expect a boost on in investments in hydrogen moving on from this point?
I don't expect a boost in investments. So who is investing now in hydrogen already had some reasonable expectation of this delegated act, what we'll be looking at. Particularly in Europe, the rules were more or less clarified already in various leaks and in the documents open for consultation of the last year. So I expect the developers in the region in Europe to have already had some quite clear idea what to expect, and perhaps there will be some additional driver in the document that will be some areas in Europe may benefit of the new definitions. I may expect more attentive care on announcements outside of Europe for export-oriented projects.
Definitely, and we've seen many major oil companies starting to invest heavily on hydrogen projects, coming up with partnerships with different players in the market, and they're also pushing the idea that maybe it's more cost effective to consider maybe for the shorter term the other colors of hydrogen, like blue hydrogen or gray hydrogen. Those are not really renewable energies, we could say, but they're more like a low carbon energy sources, right? Do you see this, considering these other colors in the spectrum of hydrogen as a something that can add up to the development of the hydrogen as a renewable source, hydrogen as in green hydrogen, or you think it's more an obstacle to this development?
So any investment in blue hydrogen brings a notable risk in the long term, because as the economy becomes more and more decarbonized, technology, well, a nitrogen production that is not fully decarbonized may risk not to have enough clients in the future. In here, the definition matters. And in this case, blue hydrogen producers will have to compete to keep a very low level of emissions for the kilogram of CO2 per kilogram of hydrogen that will be in competition with the green hydrogen production. In particular, if the green hydrogen production, the renewable energy production, already will start with very strict criteria, for example, the additionality rules of Europe. Once this technology is established, it will compete on that field, on the field of emission reduction. Moreover, fossil fuels bring with themselves the risk of price volatility. We experienced that in Europe during the last years, and already today, hydrogen production, gray hydrogen production, is more expensive than the best expected green hydrogen production. Of course, green hydrogen does not exist yet, so we cannot buy it, but tying yourself to an energy carrier that will bring the usual risks, both in terms of prices and in terms of supply, may not be the best solution. In particular, countries that do not have natural gas resources may not be willing to, for energy security reason, may not be willing to establish long-term partnerships with blue hydrogen producers. This is not a bad news for the Gulf, because the Gulf is the best place to produce also is one among the best places to produce green hydrogen. It has access to land, excellent solar resources, to access to capital that can bring down the weighted average cost of capital, and it has a natural historical role of export as exporting an exporting country. So and has very good ties with different parts of the world. So the green hydrogen part can actually be the investment and the route to go. Of course, also considering its potential use for local industry.
Certainly, and it seems good when it comes to development of hydrogen, we're still learning the ropes of, trying to figure out how to turn it into energy, bring it to scale, to mass consumption. So it seems like development would benefit from having a more experimental, a more risk taker approach, so to speak. Do you see this is a trend taking place at the moment? Maybe in the Gulf, we see, you said, as you said, like they might be the natural, well, they'll have like more advantages given their geographical climate conditions.
Yes, no, look, very nice questions. Indeed, everyone is learning the ropes, as you said, and the interesting stuff here is the fact that, like myself, most of the people that are working in this area come from the renewable energy industry and the sector. And in general, what we had in the last 10, 12 years was that we had some semi-established technologies like solar PV and wind, and the policymakers start to subsidize them, support them, creating the market conditions for them, and that made possible their rapid development worldwide. For hydrogen, it's a bit different because we never had a giga-scale electrolyzer. We never had to transport hydrogen between continents. Everything is very, very new, and whatever has been tested and tried is still at a small scale. Policymakers, therefore, are quite careful to provide incentives because they are very, and rightly so, they do not want to spend taxpayer monies for projects that will not bring substantial benefits. And at the same time, developers cannot develop green hydrogen projects if they do not have some form of support from governments and long-term agreements with the consumers, steel makers, basic chemical producer, and so on and so forth. At the same time, whoever wants to buy hydrogen, or maybe already buying gray hydrogen, is not very willing to buy something like green hydrogen if they don't know the price and what is exactly this green hydrogen. We still need these definitions. And this creates this deadlock between these actors. To add on them also the financing sectors that could finance developers and consumers is blocked because, well, by definition, they are risk averse. They try to avert risk, and without having not political, not no supporting policies, no long-term agreements, no clarity on the technology itself, they may not be very willing to spend a lot of money in this technology. Maybe some startups, maybe someone that is willing to take a high risk for high rewards, but still, all these actors are blocked. And I call this the hydrogen deadlock in this situation when no one can move because they're waiting information from the others. And when I spoke in some last panels that was during that Abu Dhabi Sustainable Energy Week, it came out that everyone would be willing to invest, willing to take the first steps if everyone takes the first steps together. So, and this is very difficult to do. So we are going probably to see very small steps coming on between these actors. I expect some long-term agreements to be signed, which will totally spur development and policies in place, definitions in place, and this will make everything easier. Now, for the first part of your question, the GCC is actually solving the deadlock somehow. It is a natural environment to solve this deadlock because of the nature of the utilities, of the facilities, of the industry here, the good connection with the financial sector, and the fact that it's possible to create a vertically integrated systems with finance and producers and consumers all under the same rooftop. It's possible to solve this deadlock because there is a continuous communication and commitment. We see, for example, the Oxagon Neon project in Saudi Arabia, and that's a very good example of this vertically integrated system where the only question it can be who is going to actually buy this green ammonia. But there is someone that is already taking the risk, saying, I'm willing to buy it to then sell it somewhere else. And yeah, so the region can be a very nice testbed for solutions for large-scale electrolyzers, and this could bring substantial benefit for the overall green hydrogen sector by providing real case examples that, if in the case knowledge sharing will be enabled, will accelerate hydrogen development worldwide.
And a common parallel that is strong with hydrogen is the one with the case of solar power, that we've seen that the price of solar power generation has dropped over the last decade, partly also because of the market-oriented policies that have helped the solar power to make it to the market. Do you think that's a case that we can also see we can eventually see in happening with green hydrogen? Or
look, yeah, for sure, because look, there are two components that determines the price of hydrogen. The energy component, and here it's we can say that for every $20 per megawatt hour of electricity, of LCOE, of our technology, we can expect the hydrogen to cost around $1 more to be added on the capex, basically the investment cost of the electrolyzers. Now, as far as I know, well, for sure, we can expect that this cost to decrease. More and more manufacturers are building manufacturing facilities that are expected to achieve a scale of 50 gigawatt per year of production capacity. This could bring down cost. Moreover, the learning curves of electrolyzers are not as steep as the solar PV ones, meaning that we cannot expect a rapid drop in cost.
Right.
That's not to be expected. But look, we are expecting 40 gigawatt to be developed. There is a pipeline of 40 gigawatt of electrolyzers by 2030, more or less. And given that, and considering the Hydrogen Council assumption, we can expect a decrease in cost of around 40 to 50% in a USD per kilowatt basis. That could already provide a very good leeway for lower cost hydrogen.
And moving, one of the big themes being based here in the UAE is now that we're about to celebrate COP28 in fall of this year, the second back-to-back COP in the region, and seems like since COP26 the hydrogen issue has gained more attention. What can we expect from this year? Do you think it's going to be something that's going to be widely discussed, or?
Yeah, for sure. Hydrogen is an opportunity for the region. I hope that is not going to be on the only topic discussed, even if it's my field. Let's remember that we have also to decarbonize the power sector first and foremost, and hydrogen is to achieve the hard-to-abate sector, so to decarbonize the last mile. And of course, it's interesting to see industrial players now talking about how to decarbonize their own consumption. This is likely the effect of the 1.5 report of the IPCC, and we're still seeing the effect. Industry understood they have to decarbonize, they are willing to take it, and they are going to participate to the COP with their announcements on, probably I'm expecting many more announcements from the industrial sector. For the region, hydrogen is a potential. There are most of the countries in the GCC area wants to invest in green hydrogen or with an export-oriented approach. So I expect that to be one of the main topics for the COP28.
And for my last question, what would you say is the biggest challenge for green hydrogen for this year, 2023? Not 5 years from now, but 10 years from now, but this year.
Okay, I'd like to remember a very nice piece of political science written in the 70s that was about the attention issue cycle. Every time in a new technology, a new challenger approaches, a new technology is created, we have this moment of enthusiasm. Everyone wants to join. It's a bit of bandwagonism as well. Then in the attention issue cycle, you have the moment when you have the realization of costs. Not only the price, but also how we have to change our lifestyle or our markets will change, who is going to become the new leader in this new technology. Maybe it will not be the usual ones. And accordingly to this attention issue cycle, then you have the gradual decline in interest until you have in a post-problem situation where maybe something has been created but hasn't solved the problem. Now, the problem is huge. And I hope 2023 will maintain the situation where we are now. Basically, the enthusiasm is over. We have achieved an understanding of what hydrogen can and should do. And I hope that the realization of cost moment will not cause a decline in interest. Instead, we're going to see investments to make these costs surpassable, addressable, the change possible, and the green hydrogen to finally play its role in the hard-to-abate sectors.
So it seems like we're starting already coming into this implementation phase and try to figure out how we do this at the end of the day. Yeah,
exactly.
So we'll have to wrap it up here. Emanuele Bianco, Program Officer at IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Agency. Thank you so much for your time and your insights.
Thank you.